Now I am in my hotel room and I have it jury rigged. So I've got the Zoom sort of working, too much light in the background, but
Hey,
that's
looks
it.
Looks great. And so is that your first in person?
It's not my first in person, but it is just about my first in person. And it's one of the biggest ones that I've done. It was really different. It was, people, I had done a few presentations during COVID where there's one person at a table and one person at a table and one person at a table. This was like a regular conference and I was speaking live, not to a green dot. And it was pretty cool.
I love that. I love that. And I did, my first one was, I guess it's 2 weeks ago now, for the Jolt Conference, and they did it. Snappy Kraken did a great job putting this conference on. It was in Vegas. It was a 2-day conference. I was on a panel, and then they had a room full of coaches at the end that we all kind of hung out in one area, but very marketing specific. So for those of you who didn't get to attend Jolt, Maribeth, I know you're on that list. Certainly put it on your calendars for next year. Thank you. Hey, Cheryl, thanks for being here. And Cheryl mentioned I did a good job. Cheryl, you did a good job too. We shared the stage, Cheryl Hickerson and I at Jolt. But it was really, one of the great things about it, Maribeth, is I've made so many relationships in the last 2 years. Cheryl was one of those people where I had a Zoom relationship. Being back in person it was so awesome. It was like really just a great experience. Robert and his team at Snappy Kraken, the job they did with speakers and panelists they did a great job there as well. But really that's the one thing that I took from it was having that in-person connection again. How great was that?
Yeah. Yep. In person, you can't beat it. And, one of the things that and I'll just throw this in here, I was talking to a firm and we're getting ready to do some research. And the hypothesis of the research is that this is the great resignation, right? This has been the great resignation. But the hypothesis from the person who's hiring me to do this is that this is the great regret. We're going to look back and go, wait a minute, we can't do all of our teamwork virtually. And I don't know that it's true or not. We haven't done the research yet, but the question is, do we have to be face-to-face to be effective workers? And there's a lot of people who would say, absolutely, you have to be face-to-face. And there's probably just as many who will say, nope, you can do this virtually. You can do it. Yeah. But I tell you what, there's nothing like face-to-face. You can't see body language. You can't see things that you can absolutely see when you're face-to-face with somebody. Yeah. We don't have a lot of long-term virtual relationships. We haven't in the past. We've had a lot of, you don't get married to somebody on Zoom, so it's a whole thing.
Yeah. One of the things Zoom makes it convenient, right? This is awesome. You're in Houston, I'm in Florida, right? And it's really great. People, dozens of people tuning in from, wherever in the country or maybe Canada as well. This is really convenient. One of the things that I find with Zoom is I get right down to business, right? Like Zoom meeting starts, you're in there, you hit the agenda, you're down to business. All right, thanks a lot. Catch you later. And a lot of the kind of nicety and that, that interpersonal stuff that happens face-to-face is gone. Yeah. when you're in that kind of digital environment. So
that's true.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm impressed with some firms. I won't put names out there, but I was impressed. We're going back 2 years. You and I saw each other like the week or two before all this happened at the BISA conference in Hollywood, Florida. Some firms adjusted so well, right? That we live in this traditional industry where I think that until there was this catalyst that made people go digital, a lot of the firms put the brakes on. Advisors adapted well too. I know Zoom technology was certainly one of those technologies that advisors had to adapt to quickly. Any others that you can think of that you were impressed with people, the advisors maybe you've known for 20 years that are in their 60s and, and like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden they've got to adapt to a new world?
Well, one of the things that I found is that those that did work on adapting, like using Zoom and other virtual tools, Teams or whatever it is, found that they could actually be successful getting clients from across the country as opposed to right in their backyard, which that's just the way it's always been. We go out, we network, we get referrals from people in our local area, and that's it. And now people are able to leverage LinkedIn and Zoom technology and focusing on niches and really start to dive deep across the country into some of these niches where you may never actually meet with the person. We're just talking about how you have to be face to face, but it's really worked for some advisors, and they're not just the young advisors, they're across the board.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that narrow niche conversation is an important one. Right. So we can kind of head down that path a little bit. And again, if anybody's got questions, want to chime in, have a question for Maribeth or I, put that in the chat, put it in the Q&A. FINRA's number last year, Maribeth, and those who have been on my presentation before, I bring this up quite a bit because it's important, right? FINRA's number, I think last year was 687,000 advisors in the country. And that includes RIAs, right? So that's not all just registered reps. Now, not all those people are practicing, but let's say half of them are, 350,000, right? That's a lot of competition. As far as I know, third in the nation behind real estate and legal. And of course, legal divides itself into small little verticals there as well. Picking that niche, we've seen helps reduce competition. Right. So when you're focused specifically on executives at a certain company or medical professionals at a certain hospital, or, we've got some people focused on, some clients focused on government employees. Right. So all of these people have certain subtleties in what their needs are and where an advisor adds value. So it cuts that competition, really personalizes the communication. Sounds like you're a huge advocate of getting narrow as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm a huge advocate of it because I've seen it work, not because I think it's a good idea. I've just literally seen it work. And I know that it's hard for someone to say, hey, well, I work with anybody. And truly, a lot of advisors could work with anybody.
Sure.
But this idea that the way that we bring in a lot of business is through referrals and through connections. And we can't do that as well with just a broad base of everyone in the United States that's over 50 years old that's thinking about retiring. It's just, it's a little bit further, it's just a little bit too broad, but I've seen it work and it really does. And the highest producing financial advisors that we work with all have at least one niche. Now, some of them have 3 or 4 niches, and there's strategies and ways of doing that. But, having a niche, diving deep into something is really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really think it increases trust, right? We got the know you, like you, trust you, right? That's when people do business with you, when those 3 things align. And of course they have a need, but it increases trust when you can speak very specifically to someone's needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a comment by Cheryl. I'm gonna pause for a second to read this because it's long. Cheryl, thank you. Can be laser focused and cut through the noise. So Cheryl's commenting basically on what we're saying. The old ways of local chamber meetings, et cetera, is not cost effective.
Right. And I'm not sure it ever really was cost effective, but it was the way that we learned to market.
Yeah.
And now there's so many other tools. And I think part of that is, and we have to be honest with this, like for a lot of advisors, it's overwhelming. All of a sudden, they've got all these different tools and they're supposed to be on social media and doing all these things. And, when a firm asks me to talk about social media, I say, do you really want me to talk about social media? Because I feel like advisors don't always want to hear about social media because they've heard so many presentations about social media. They've tried it and it hasn't worked. And so there's all of these marketing things that are out there. And which way do I turn? What should I do? And sometimes it's just easier to, I don't know, I'm just going to do nothing and hope that referrals come in. And I think that the problem with that is not that you're not going to get the referrals because you are. The problem is what are you missing out on? The people that you could be serving that you're not serving because you haven't reached out. And if you look at how much your clients love you and you say, I could have more clients like that really I've helped to change their lives. Well, who's losing? It's not you, it's them and you.
Yeah. Losing an opportunity. I'm on this teeter of like, we keep saying social media like it's a different thing. right? Like it's something that is, aside from the normal. And for a lot of us, I mean, I wrote my first, I wrote my first programming in high school. I graduated high school in 91. I could draw a figure eight with DOS programming or whatever the heck we were doing. Right now, that's well in advance of social media. But this isn't a trend. Like this is here to stay. I met my wife on MySpace. So we go back that far for, I was using it, been married 15 years this summer. Right. So I think there's a lot of us who kind of, heck, even going back to the internet, beginning of internet, we thought it was a trend. We expected it to be a trend. It wasn't a trend, right? Social media is not a trend. It is.
Right.
It is.
And the thing though, Charlie, is that people think that some advisors think that because of compliance, you really can't do anything on social media. And that has really been debunked, that that's really not the case at all. And just about, I mean, every firm that I work with now, they're able to do things on social media. Maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, they couldn't do the same amount of things, but they can today. And so it's no longer, it's really just an opportunity. It's not a hindrance or something, that's I'm going to work on. It's not going to work. It will work if you do it right.
Yeah. And it's a huge opportunity. And that's one of the things that impressed me most with the changes we went through, 24, 25 months ago, was the firm's ability to adapt quickly through technology, so that there wasn't this big delay in social media content. Right. We got the great content libraries out there. We'll talk a little bit about content marketing here in a moment. But the ability now for most advisors, and some compliance departments have not gotten this far, but most advisors can post freely. Now they know if they post something about securities, they're going to get that post yanked. But that stuff is in most cases that's reviewed in arrears now. So you're free to post, and within 24, 36 hours, if that's in violation of any compliance policies, that post's going to come down.
Yeah.
Right. But most advisors now can post freely without having to jump through the hoops that compliance creates for them.
Yep.
So that's one of the things that impressed me the most about this quick evolution from a very traditional industry into this, oh my gosh, we all work digital. So yeah, we closed an office with COVID. We had 8 or 9 people coming to an office here in Daytona Beach, and a couple things happened, right? Productivity did not go down. What it did is actually we've been able to hire better talent because our talent search is now across the country, right? So our last couple hires, we made a hire yesterday from North Carolina, Virginia, Minnesota. So, I mean, our team. Now, the struggle I have with that is, how do you maintain camaraderie through all of that? Do you have any tips on that, Maribeth, on, how you maintain camaraderie when your team is, a national team now as opposed to a local team?
Yeah, well, the one thing that I have found, and my team has been virtual since 2010. I didn't tell anybody about it in the very beginning because it was kind of taboo. What do you mean you don't have an office?
Yeah,
Are you,
wow.
a real business? Like, yeah, we're a real business, but we don't. So we went virtual in 2010, and I've got my team all across, well, mostly all across the Midwest, from Nashville up. But here's the thing. I think it's important to still get together. So you have a retreat once a year, and it's not a Zoom retreat. You actually get people together. And it's kind of like what happened at the Snappy Kraken conference. You have been having these Zoom relationships with people, and all of a sudden you get to meet them in person. It's like, wow, this is great. I finally get to meet you. And there is something about that. We need human connection, and it's not always just through Zoom. I mean, we did lots of human connection through Zoom during COVID, but when we got to see people again and go to restaurants, we were like, oh, this is so great.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So you still have to get together.
Yeah, I agreed. I had a great dinner with Marie Swift while I was in Vegas. So that's an old mutual friend of ours. So Cheryl chimes in, we need to make marketing bite size. to learn the idea of what we need to be doing and then hire out for more complex marketing needs. Cheryl, I agree with you. I think that outsourcing is an important piece of the puzzle. One of the themes that came out of Jolt, and it was a lot of panels, some really great speakers. This guy named Adam Morgan, who blew my mind as far as right brain, left brain. He's an Adobe guy. Blew my mind. Adam Morgan, look him up. He was awesome. So, and lots of great speakers. But one of the things that came up repeatedly in the panels and the speakers is advisors need to invest 24 to 36 months in a marketing strategy. Yeah. So we've got a lot of, we started when we first started, we brought on clients on a 6-month contract and we had a good retention rate, I felt. But everybody's looking for a quick fix, right? As far as client acquisition is concerned. And so we've got some clients that they're on our platform for 6 or 8 weeks and go, wait a second, when do the clients flood in? Right. And it really is a long play. Most of our clients are landing, within that 6-month term are bringing on new clients, but it is a long-term play. Does that seem right to you? 24 to 36 months?
Yeah, we see it about 18 to 24 months to really get that going. But, there isn't an advisor that I work with that is good with that.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. You know what? Let's do this. How much money can we spend? And before we get results, like it's not a popular thing, but it's why the top producers who are using things like content marketing are the top producers, because they're willing to invest in that, knowing that this is the path for future success. Yeah. And we do content marketing with advisors and it is successful. It just takes a little bit more time. Yeah. And I just don't know any advisors that are super patient, but if you can find a way to be patient, the payoff is really, really great.
Yeah. So how do you, through those 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, before you start to see that pipeline really fill up, what are the measurables that you and your clients are talking about that, that they're keying on? There's got to be some, some front end indicators, right, as to what's coming. Yep. What are you looking at for that?
Well, we're still always looking for the big hit, right? So we're always putting out a new call to action that somebody can download. And we're, the thing that we've actually found that quickens that process, speeds it a little bit, is to have an event. So it's a webinar or a live event. And if you can get them to come to that, it really catapults it into closing that funnel a little bit quicker. Yeah. But it's just something that we can just continue to work on and continue to try. But we look at engagement rates, we look at open rates, we look at, is anyone looking at this stuff that we're putting out there? If one of our campaigns is to really promote this podcast and no one is listening to the podcast, well, we got to figure out we're not doing it right. So there's certain things that you can tell, hey, listen, if there's nobody here, we got the wrong strategy. And then on the other hand, wow, I had no idea there's gonna be so many people that were gonna download this and listen to this and do this. And you have to continue to change and move around in marketing. So I think patience and flexibility are the two most important things, because once you figure out the secret sauce, then it is, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought up podcasts, because I didn't put that on our talking points, but it's something that I was thinking about prior to jumping on here. And I do want to talk about podcasts because, listen, I think it's the most popular thing in marketing right now, right? Or at least the new shiny thing in marketing right now. The downloads is a number. Here's the thing that's interesting to me about podcasts, right? I love having you as a guest on the webinar. And we had, by virtue of really the only marketing we did for this was LinkedIn posts. I put one email out and then we ran a LinkedIn event. I think we had about right around 200 signups for it. So we'll see, what our percentage of people that show up for, but that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good reach for, frankly, kind of minimal effort into it, really. LinkedIn events is awesome. I'll talk about that a little bit more. One of the hesitations I have for podcasts, and I don't want to bet, I got great friends who are doing podcasts for a living and doing really well with it. Great that you've got 1,000 downloads, but how do you know who those people are? To my knowledge, there isn't a way. Whereas we've got 200 people who sign up for a webinar here. We got their name, we got their email address that allows some kind of follow-up, right?
Yeah. Well, there
So
has to be engagement. And that's why podcasts will typically try to get people to go to other places. Go to my YouTube channel, go to my website, download this, do this, so that we can start to interact. But we consider that a top of the funnel activity. So we're getting people interested, and we got to bring them through the funnel. We still, that's content marketing. We still have to, now that they, hey, if somebody's listening to the podcast, let's see if they'll also do this, and then also do this. And so the podcast is its own entity, but it leads to all sorts of other things. And with content marketing, every piece of content leads to something else.
Yeah.
And so that's always the way that it has to be. So if you're good on, video, putting up, videos on your YouTube channel, or you're good on, doing a podcast or something like that, you've got a unique idea, that's great, but that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a good question from my buddy Marcus Robinson. Maribeth, I'll let you take this one. Maybe I'll chime in there. How do you go about choosing a niche? If I can ask it, Marcus, if you want to elaborate a little bit, what are some keys to uncovering the best niche for your practice?
Yeah. So one of the things, and we've helped a lot of advisors find that niche. One of the things that we do is, the easiest path possible is to take a look at your own book of business. Yeah. So we did this with an advisor in Illinois many years ago. He had several people, like a handful, that had worked at the same company. And it was just sort of happenstance that was the deal. And we thought, well, why don't we try to leverage this? And so we started doing a seminar, but it was very much different than what you would think. So back in this day, we would send to the current clients that he had that worked at that particular company. We sent them a bunch of invitations each. Like if I'm one of those people, I get 10 invitations. And then I'm supposed to hand those out to other people or forward those to other people that I know. So basically he sent out 5 emails to fill a seminar, and actually in those days, he sent out paper invitations. So the first thing and by the way, he went from 10 million to 200 million in 5 years by using that strategy.
Wow.
No, it worked. But here's the thing. It's about looking at your current book of business, and also about looking at your skill set. So here's another thing that we did with someone else. They're really technically oriented. They love, doing a lot of technical presentations, and sometimes it goes over the head of clients, but not engineers. So he started to focus on engineers. Yeah. And right now, across the country, focusing on engineers, the kind of client that a lot of financial advisors don't necessarily want. But he saw a path. It's like when you start thinking out, what career should I go in? You go, well, I'm really good at this, and I'm good at this, and I'm good at this, and I'm not good at this. I think I'll go down this path. It's the same thing for figuring out your niche. What are you really good at? Where do you really resonate? Where do you have some special expertise? And who do you not work well with? And we've got a lot of other financial advisors that say, I'll work with anyone, but not engineers, right? So it kind of just depends. And it's not pulling it out of a hat, just going, hey, doctors are wealthy, so I want to work with doctors. Right. Doctors are very difficult to work with. Mm-hmm. And so they're hard to reach, they're hard to get in touch with, they're hard to meet with, but they have a big payoff. So is there someone that's better than that? Maybe there's executives, maybe there's female executives, maybe there's a whole bunch of different aerospace engineers is one of, people in the aerospace industry is a niche that one of our advisors is using. So it can go across the board, but you have to look at it from a logical standpoint. What do we have that would be low-hanging fruit, that would be easy to try to activate?
We really look at differentiators. We talk a lot about the differentiator in an advisor's practice or business. We're looking for differentiators in a niche, right? So we got a client that we targeted a hospital in California, physicians at a hospital in California, right? Difficult to work with medical professionals often because of how busy they are, data-driven people, just like an engineer, right? So, but their particular retirement plan was a KEO plan. Don't ask me what that really means. The advisor knew, and that's what was important there, right? But what it does is differentiates that particular niche, so that when they speak about the KEO plan, that's, it resonates with the people they're talking to. Another client lived in the state capital, of this particular state, and the pension plan for state employees, right? So finding a differentiator, finding something that's unique about maybe a stock option plan for executives, deferred compensation, whatever, but looking for those unique aspects to a niche that you can speak very specifically to, because the moment you say something that is specific to that person, now you're already the expert, but now there's trust built there. You know their life, as opposed to talking in generalities about every pre-retiree under the sun. By the way, I love retirees and pre-retirees as a niche. And it's like everybody. That's like everybody on the planet, I think. Anyway, so I joke with that, of course. So
Mike, or Marcus, excuse me, also asked in the end of his question, how do you penetrate that niche and become the go-to advisor? Yeah. And this is a content strategy, but I think the more that you're posting and writing and being published in different online publications or whatever it is, we've got someone who works in the physicians market and publishes in some of the online physician publications. They're not reading a lot of stuff, but they are reading that. Physicians are not hanging out on LinkedIn or Facebook for the most part, but they are looking at certain publications. So it's to find your spot of where they're at. People will say, well, where should I reach physicians? Well, I don't know, but I hope my physician isn't hanging out on LinkedIn. My physician is hanging out someplace else. And so, I think it's a matter of figuring out where they are and then reaching them where they are with that specialty. So it's articles, it's videos, it's other kinds of things, and even it's search engine optimization, so that when someone is searching for something, they're finding you. And that you're putting yourself out there as the go-to person, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to tell you that you're the go-to person.
Yeah. Let's talk about search engine optimization a little bit. You keep tapping on the perfect topics here. First off, I absolutely love LinkedIn. In fact, can you give me a ability to share?
I think I did.
Okay, cool. Let me make sure that so I actually, I prepared a couple of things for sharing just in case we went there. So I might as well show it off because I got it up. So, by virtue of doing this stuff for a long time, you can go about 10 pages deep, and I've got a unique name and a lot of listings on Google as a result of that. Right. So, we scroll through, I'll go right to like page 5 or something. I'll come back to page 1 in a second, but, still all me. I just saw a nasty review I left for a local restaurant. That's not a good thing to show. That's number 1. Look at that. That's the top of page number 1. Mm-hmm. Right, is my LinkedIn. Of all the things, our website comes second. LinkedIn's got better SEO than our website has. Right. So I think even if the physicians are not hanging out on LinkedIn, still, if that's your niche, make sure that you're sharing content and writing your profile along the lines of who you're targeting. Right. So that's really important. LinkedIn's SEO is absolutely awesome. You do more with SEO on websites than I do. Admittedly, I did websites early in my career and spent a little time with FMG, did some websites there too. But with social advisors, we've stayed away from that, right? There's a lot of providers out there. I've never had a website launch probably in scope, I don't think. So that was part of that decision too. But, so how is SEO changing for websites? Any kind of new tips that we need to inform our audience on?
Well, sometimes when an advisor will look at what is proposed for instance, their navigation and their homepage, we like to put a link up for locations in the navigation of the website. Why? Why can't you just go to the contact page? Because you've got locations, and below that you've got people that you work at. So for instance, like I'm in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and I'm also in Fort Myers, Florida, and I'm also in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And so what if I put all those locations on? Why does that matter? Because the way that people still look for financial advisors is financial advisor in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Right.
And if you don't have that up there because you're not there very often, but you do have some clients there, I mean, this is actually a way. No, we just talked about how we can market and work with people across the country. But if you've got hotbeds of places, we've got clients in San Francisco, we've got clients, put those locations on there because people are still searching for somebody local, or they're searching for financial advisors specializing in teachers.
Yeah.
And so you have to have those words up on your website, and you have to have written about how financial advisors, this financial advisor works with teachers in this way. So you have to put those words up there. And sometimes you have to use words that you wouldn't necessarily put a locations drop down. You wouldn't necessarily put a whole bunch of words and location stuff inside of the text. It doesn't necessarily look awesome all the time, but it's the way that you increase your search engine optimization. So we have to do things sometimes that aren't beautiful, but and my big motto with websites is less is more in terms of words, but you still have to have the right words there that people are searching for.
Yeah. And when I'm not happy with my site right now, so we're constantly tweaking it. That's just who I am, I guess. But when we tweak it, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get less and less words, do more with images and video. So tagging videos, the right video descriptions are helpful. Go ahead.
I said tagging pictures too.
Tagging pictures, absolutely. And consistently updating on-page content. Right. So it used to be that we'd write a blog so we could publicize the blog content. We do less of that publicizing blog content. In fact, most of our blog content now is a result of these joint webinars. So really, a lot of that's happening after the fact. But it's, the video's up there. There's a good description of it. So it's all about on-page SEO.
Yeah, that's right.
So we really, really concentrate on that. How about Google My Business? You were talking about locations, and that's what popped up that's what popped up in my head. So
it absolutely works, and it's free, and it's one of the ways, especially we work with advisors, a lot of advisors who are actually transitioning from, let's say, a wirehouse to an RIA or something like that. And their clients don't know where they are. And, it's really important to use Google My Business because it's one way that you can help to get to come up when someone is searching for you and say, oh, that's where he's at. Okay, I got it. But there's, you just have to make sure you're doing all of these different things. You can even get Google verified now.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Yeah.
And it's evolving, right? It's always evolving. It's tough to stay on top of. We get really focused on LinkedIn. We get really focused on highly personalized content marketing and really focused on CRM. Taylor asks us, Maribeth, maybe got some insight here. Is the testimonial rule changing for broker dealers? We know it, we made the change for RIAs. Any insight?
Well, it depends on the broker dealer. What I hear, especially from the big broker dealers, is we're working on it. Okay. So they haven't quite figured out how to do it. It was just something that it was easy to say no to. And now there's some ways to use testimonials. We have some of the largest broker dealers are allowing some of this. It depends on the guidance at your broker dealer. And so you have to follow the guidance at your broker dealer, but I would assume that within a year or two that it would be a lot more mainstream than it is today, because you can't ask an advisor to compete in an area where their biggest competitive advantage is what their clients are saying about them, and all of their competitors can do it, but they can't do it. So I think we'll see that coming around. I mean, the SEC has made, it's put some guidance around that makes it clear that RIAs can do it. So why can't other financial advisors do it? And it's coming.
Yeah, agreed. And I will tell you, I won't bring up any firm names because I don't want to compromise anybody here, but I know a coaching client of ours who is with one of the big firms who got a negative Google review. It was a small client of his that he shipped off to a smaller advisor so they could service them well. I mean, really, it was altruistic in sending this off to a client or to an advisor that could service an account that size where he couldn't. And the guy left him a 1-star Google review, slammed him like crazy. I said, well, you got two options: reach out to that person and beg them to take it down, or check with compliance. You can bury it with a whole bunch more reviews. Within the week, he had 15 or 16 Google reviews. Now, I didn't check his compliance on that, but To my knowledge, they're still up. So I see a lot of advisors, even with the large wirehouse firms, they're gaining Google reviews. I'm not advocating to go do that against compliance, check your compliance rules, but certainly Google reviews and that, that social proof, if you will, is really important. So
yeah, absolutely. It's critically important. It's one of the, and it's the reason that a lot of marketing people don't like working in this industry, because they go, well, why don't you do the obvious that's going to help you? Nope, we can't do the obvious that's going to help us. But it's coming around. Coming around.
It is. And that's part of that, adaptation to a new age. So I want to ask you let's get specific on social media for a little bit. And then before we wrap, I want to talk a little bit about content marketing. And, I've got some content examples that I can share. So maybe that's helpful. Facebook, let's start there. Not my favorite platform, by the way. If I post on Facebook, I post a little bit professionally, or, certainly Social Advisors has a presence on Facebook. If you see me personally on Facebook, it's usually because my photographer wife has taken photos and tagged me and whatever else, right? Love keeping up with birthdays and friends. Maribeth, how are advisors using Facebook to their greatest advantage?
Yeah. So starting with me, I have a personal Facebook account. I do not have a business Facebook account. We don't use Facebook for business. And partially the reason is that a lot of financial advisors are not hanging out on Facebook. And so my market is financial advisors. And so we're just not doing that. But a financial advisor looking for clients, it really works. Facebook advertising for local events, fill the house. It works.
Awesome. I love that.
It works, especially even in larger, more populous areas. It works, especially if you get really targeted, and you can do some really great targeting with Facebook. Yeah. But I think in general, just doing posting on a regular basis, not a real targeted post where you're actually asking someone to do something, has limited success, I would say. But it depends on your client base. If your client base is retired, you probably want to be on Facebook. If your client base isn't retired, you probably want to be on LinkedIn, and it's everywhere in between, because it's really what prospects are you targeting and where are they spending their time? If they're not spending their time on Facebook, you shouldn't be spending your time on Facebook either.
Yeah, I agree. And a great question by Elise. Thank you, Elise, for this question. What about Facebook groups for your targeted niche? Listen, I think it's great, right?
100% awesome. That's an awesome question. And I'm actually getting ready to start one myself. But outside of financial services, I also teach at Oklahoma State, and I teach this class called Personal Branding, Name, Image, and Likeness for student athletes. And this whole NIL thing is blowing up.
Cool.
I'm starting a Facebook group to communicate with other educators that are teaching NIL across the country. So, but otherwise, I'm not hanging out necessarily on Facebook, but that's a really great strategy, because that's a way where you can have some really powerful conversations with people.
Yeah. Here's one, my favorite strategy on Facebook has nothing to do with content. So, we live in this world. I'm an advocate. Well, I teach our coaching clients don't ask for referrals, right? The stats behind it is like 90% of the people you ask for a referral, it's a difficult question to ask, right? It comes off poorly in most cases. Some people are really good at it. I think it's 83% of affluent investors. I don't know, whatever the stat is, it's most people don't like being asked for referrals. So we ask for introductions instead. In order to ask for introductions or to get the right audience at one of your small events or whatever that might be, I love the social intelligence around Facebook. So if you've got a good relationship with a client you'd consider an advocate of yours, connect with them on Facebook, right? That's not for everybody. But if you're trying to duplicate that client, you've got a good relationship, connect with them on Facebook. And before that next review meeting, go through like their last month of posting and see who consistently comments on their posts, and then be like, hey, who's John Smith? Right? So as you're thinking about, hey, we're going to go do a golf outing, or we're going to do a wine tasting to get back to, some traditional small intimate events. Instead of saying invite a friend, you can now say, why don't you invite John Smith, right? So anyway, I love it for just kind of that social intelligence around your best client base. So I've
Yep.
seen it used really effectively. Let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn. One of the technologies that I love that got it, it helped our business, frankly, but one of the technologies that advisors adopted very quickly is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I mean, like I was turned on to it. I think it came out maybe 2016, 2017, something like that, after Microsoft bought LinkedIn. Single best sales tool I've ever used, like bar none.
Yeah.
Like not even close.
It absolutely is true, but you have to be someone who wants to pay attention. If you want to really use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's not a, hey, I'm just going to sign up for LinkedIn Sales Navigator and the world is going to change for me.
Right.
You have to be actively involved, opening it up every day and doing things that are meaningful. And a lot of advisors don't necessarily know the meaningful tasks to do inside of there. I know you do, Charlie. I refer my clients over to you.
Yes,
They really need help with, with those kinds of things. But it's, if you really want to get active and you really want to use it as a prospecting tool, you can. And it won't cost you very much to do it, but it will cost you time. And that's the thing that a lot of advisors don't really want to maybe invest in. But that's where a firm like yours comes in, or just, trying to figure out the secret sauce of how you use this.
Yeah. And it's, we boil it down. We try to boil it down to routines. Like if I give you information, you implementing on that information, the chance of that, not you specifically, Maribeth, but an advisor, if I give an advisor information, the implementation rate of information is very poor. But if I hand you a routine, do these 3 things, it's going to take you 15 minutes. It's much easier to implement. So we really boil down to 15 to 20 minutes daily. I do the exact same routine that we coach advisors to do. And it's number 1, connect with 10 people, or send 10 invites out, right? So you're going to get about a 25 to 30% connection rate. But I mean, sales navigator, I'll do a real quick demo of it. I'll make it super quick, and you're in Houston. Let me just grab Houston real quick here. I forgot to share screen, so that'll help. I was navigating around, realizing nobody could watch. Okay. So if we just move some video panes around, if I go to Sales Navigator, we'll make it really, we're coming up against the top of the hour pretty quick, and I want to talk content marketing a little bit. So you've got this lead filters. Sales Navigator is at the core of it. It's more than this, but at the core of it, it's a query tool. Right? There's like 820 million profiles on LinkedIn now. About a third of that's in North America. So there's about 250,000 or more professional profiles on LinkedIn between the US and Canada. But if you're, if I'm in Houston, we'll use your location just for our example. If I'm in Houston, Texas, and I'm looking to, if I want to go seniority level, we're trying to find, they move these search bars around a little bit. So if we go industry, oil and gas is a good one. So Houston, Texas, oil and gas, that's probably the most prominent one in Houston, 170,000 results. If we go to seniority level, and, let's say, we'll just choose senior. This number, frankly, is too big. We'd want to get more narrow, but for the sake of time, we'll jump into this very quickly. There are 67,000 senior, whatever that means. We'd have to sort through here more profiles on LinkedIn. I mean, reaching out to, and we coach our advisors to get more narrow than this, of course, but for the sake of time, reaching out and sending 10 connection invitations. Once you narrow down that audience, and, if we were looking for plan sponsors in Des Moines, Iowa, it doesn't have to be a big city like Houston. We could go, fairly rural. You're still going to get thousands of results, basically anywhere you're searching.
So Charlie, share the difference between just using regular LinkedIn to do a search like this and using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because that's a big difference.
Huge difference. You're right. So if I go to LinkedIn and so some of the content, let's see if we can jump on that one. I pulled up some content posts just to talk about that. But, if I go to LinkedIn, I can search someone's name, right? Let's pay Mary Rose. I met at the Jolt Conference, was looking her up yesterday to connect on LinkedIn. So, I've got my search criteria. If I type in someone like, let's say John Smith, just so we get a bunch of returns. I can look at certain groups under John Smith and posts, but I can only do a very small set number of searches. And then the criteria I have On the free version, really, it's okay for looking for specific individuals, but when you're looking for a niche, it very much limits your ability to do that.
Yeah.
So for that $99 monthly investment in Sales Navigator, it opens up the world of, if you're prospecting professionals, it really is, there's no better place to do that. I know a lot of you probably have like Zoom info subscriptions, and that's great to get the data, but just having the data, that doesn't allow you to, like, I could jump into Guinevere here and find out what makes up Guinevere, right? I could comment on stuff that Guinevere's associated with outside of her business. I could get to know who that person is, not just see their name, right?
Yep.
So that's pretty awesome. So I think Sales Navigator is one of those technologies that I saw just take off with the pandemic. So that's been pretty cool to see. And it's, it's been good for our business, but also it is spot on the best sales technology I've ever used. So yeah, very cool. Let's talk about content marketing. It goes back to niche, right? Being able to speak very specifically to a niche audience. Right?
Yeah.
I love content marketing, Maribeth. LinkedIn, of course, but across other social media, but email, right? Email marketing as well. You guys do a bit of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of technology out there that can help you do content marketing, but not only does it take a while to figure out, like Active Campaign or something like that, it takes a while to figure out something like that. And then it's very robust. And so you're learning it, like, the first time that your company told you had to use some CRM database or something, and you're like, I don't want to use this. It's too confusing. But that's kind of where content marketing is. But there are so many programs like Active Campaign and Sharpspring that will allow you to really create a funnel, create campaigns, track every single thing that people are doing, and know exactly when, based on lead scoring, to reach out to somebody. And these things are super helpful, but you have to have somebody internally who's going to work it.
Yeah.
You just have to have somebody who's going to constantly be working that thing. But it's all about the content, the video content, the written content, and then, doing events and other things like that. It's all at the top of the funnel. And then you're trying to bring people in by keeping them engaged in what you're doing until they decide, hey, I think I want to come to an event, have a meeting, do business.
Yeah, no, you're exactly. It's the nurture part of the process, right? And you brought up Sharpspring. Sharpspring is a platform that we resell. It's a CRM platform, and the beauty of how that works, and it's a robust piece of software. It's no joke. You do need someone to administer it, whether that's outsourced or someone on staff. You can load all your marketing assets through it. Everything. Right. So like you code the website, you load your key YouTube videos, you load all your social media content, so that when you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, they can be automatically ported into Active Campaign or Sharpspring or Salesforce, or, I'll even say Redtail and Wealthbox, though those aren't necessarily robust marketing platforms. Certainly you can port your connections in there. But the first thing our first effort is to get somebody to the website. Right. So when they come in from LinkedIn, a message goes out that is developing value within that relationship, getting them to the website to consume that value piece, because that platform then aligns that unique user with an IP address. So now when they go watch your YouTube video, they get 5 points. And when they interact with your social media posts, they get 5 more points. And your email, they open it, they click on links, they get 5 more points. So if you connect with 10 people a day, let's say, not everybody's listening to you. In fact, if you connect with 10 people a day, it might be one person every 3 days that's really listening to your message, right? But hopefully more, but so it's hopefully more. But the reality is, right, for most advisors, it's not a huge number. But the ability to watch that score increase, to identify who those 1 or 2 or 3 people are that are really resonating with your marketing message, that's the magic of those machines. I mean, it really, and then when they hit that arbitrary number of 75 or whatever number you assign it in the system, now you can automate some call to action in front of them to get them on your calendar or get them to your event or whatever that is. So the ability to use content to measure, I think, is really, really important. Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. But content marketing is the longer term kind of you've got to be patient, you got to be flexible, you got to try new things. But the payoff is huge, and the payoff is long term. You're developing an online history of this content, and then you can start really nurturing for referrals. And it builds from your nurturing prospects, you're nurturing clients, and now you're getting referrals coming in, and it just builds on itself. So it's definitely something for advisors who have someone internally to learn how to build something like this. It will last for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, and it's really similar to, there's a lot of advisors buying leads. Again, we'll bring up any of the lead selling companies out there. The system's not that different than what they use to develop leads and then sell them to masses of advisors. You can develop that exact same system for yourself, which is pretty cool. Because of the nature of our industry, the regulatory environment we live in, there's a number of firms out there, and the great content, not negative commentary on the content, but take an FMG Suite, a Snappy Kraken, and there's Advisor Stream and others out there that basically build it once, sell it many times is the model, right? So they may have 10,000 advisor clients all tapping into the same 200 or 250 pieces of content. In the world of, say, an Advisor Stream, where you put in your keywords and they're searching Google databanks for articles that match what you're looking for. I tell you, in my inbox, Maribeth, because I get newsletters from a lot of advisors in my inbox, I know when those companies send out their newsletters, right? Because I'll get 20 or 25 of the exact same newsletter.
Right, me too.
Now, it's okay to have that content for base. I think 5 years ago when content marketing, or maybe 7 or 8 years ago when content marketing was really growing in our industry, still is really going, but pretty new. It was that type of service was different at that time. It's fine to have a base there, but I think the advisors that are more successful with content marketing are producing or outsourcing the creation of personalized content.
Yeah, absolutely. I always look at it like there's levels. If an advisor hasn't done anything and they need to keep in touch with their clients using, the FMG newsletter or whatever that, whatever it is, content is better than doing nothing, because you're getting exposure, you're putting yourself out there. I think it's a really good thing to do, but as just to stay in touch and to do the exposure. But if you really want to use content for marketing purposes, for inbound marketing, for getting people to want to do business with you, and actually just have engagement with your stuff. There's one thing, I see that she sends emails all the time. She's pretty busy. I don't ever read those emails, but I see them oh my gosh, I have to open this email and read this because what she just wrote is my issue.
Yes.
And so it's just levels of engagement. And the more you can engage somebody, like have an advisor at a big firm, and she uses some of the standard posts on LinkedIn that she can grab from her firm. And she gets very little interaction from those, but she's, constantly just using that tool that they have. And then she won an award, and she posted about the award that she won, and she got hundreds and hundreds of pieces of engagement. We were like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
She was surprised, but people knew that this was her. And so she is, and people are wishing her congratulations, and they're all over because it was something that was personal. And in her case, it was personal about herself, but people loved it. And they don't love the other posts that she puts up there. They might see it, but they're definitely not engaging with it.
Yeah. I'll say, and I think LinkedIn's got a bit of a problem, right? LinkedIn is, if there's 820 million profiles, it's 820 million people that, they have a sales objective for the most part, right? And so a lot of the content we see is about selling service, as opposed to socializing. So to the point about your client, right? When you give your audience a reason to celebrate, I've got a couple posts pulled up, I'll show real quick, but when you give your audience a reason to celebrate with you, they will. Yes. And then the exposure of your content goes crazy, right? And that's what LinkedIn needs, frankly. Yes, tips and tricks are okay, right? Tips and tricks for this to achieve that, whatever. That you do that occasionally because it demonstrates your expertise, but the more personal you can get, the more effective your content is. And so I'll share my screen real quick here. We're kind of winding down at the top of the hour, and I don't want to keep us too much longer, but I do have a couple pulled up here. I'll tell you my favorite post right now, my favorite kind of post is polls. I know I've got one here. Let me find it. Yeah, so I hit the rat type. Check this out. So this is a poll I did. It's quite a while ago that I did this. It's a poll that got 6,500 impressions just by asking. And of course, we sell. Which one was this? Do you have a system in place for following up? We sell CRM services. So I asked a poll that specifically asked my audience, do you have a follow-up process in place? These 50%, these 38, right? And we had 52 votes on it. So let's say that's 25, 26 people. Those are prospects who need our services, right? I mean, I identified 26 people who, of course, we don't want to be salesy, but certainly I can reinforce that with more information on CRM, right? I think I've got one up here that speaks exactly to what you were talking about. Yeah, this was our 6-year anniversary last October, right? 61 comments. Look at that. Everybody wants to celebrate that, 2,700, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, that's a little bit of personal video, right? 3,400 impressions on personal video. And a lot of this, you got to know what the algorithm's doing on LinkedIn. Here's one of me with my dog on my lap, right? 42 comments on that, right? So it's about, of course, we put information out there about better marketing content and things along those lines, but the more personal, the more social you can get. I mean, LinkedIn is starved for that type of content. Now, we also have, this is at socialpostparty.com. So go check this out. It's a video of me explaining what it is, but it takes that engagement pod concept, and we run 8 parties a week. And so basically you post in groups of 15. And so when you post, 15 people comment on yours, you comment on 15 people's posts, and LinkedIn then shows it to a much, much larger portion of your audience. And so that's at socialpostparty.com if you want to go check that out. It's been a great little piece of software to help us gain some added exposure. So I'm just making sure we don't have any other questions. Maribeth, we're at the top of the hour. I could chat with you for 3 hours, I think.
We could talk about marketing forever.
I know we could, but you know, I think that eventually we'd lose our audience. They can only handle, I find they can only handle 1 hour of marketing at a time.
That's true. That's very true. Well, it was great spending this hour with you. Yeah,
Maribeth, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know you got a busy schedule in Houston and in Florida yesterday. What else is coming up for you?
In Lake Tahoe next week speaking, and then it's Las Vegas and Denver, and it's just all over the place. So
I lived in South Lake for a while. Yeah, I was a ski bum. Once upon a time, I step aside, I see some old snowboards back there and stuff, you know. Yeah. So I was a ski bum. I was a Tahoe bum for a while. It was good. It was good living. Well, very cool. Very safe and happy travels to you. Thank you again for joining me today. I'm honored by that. I'll get the recording process tonight. I'll get a link off to you tomorrow. And then everybody who's here and everybody who registered, we'll get an email out to them. And Maribeth, what's the best way to contact you if anybody wants to get in touch to learn more about Red Zone marketing and your many adventures?
Yeah, you can go to redzonemarketing.com, or you can email info@redzonemarketing.com. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. LinkedIn is Maribeth Kuzmeski. Instagram is MB Kuzmeski. So we'll see you there.
All right. Thanks, Maribeth. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Your time is precious. We thank you for sharing it with us.